Have you ever met those people that seem to have it all together? Those people make me crazy because it just doesn't seem real to me, right? We work so hard to curate an appearance to make sure people know that we've got it together or we've got things figured out, that we present an idea of ourselves that isn't authentic or real. On the other hand, though, have you ever met someone who is walking through a time of difficulty, a time of challenge, and they know it, but they face it with this sense of hope and strength? They live this authentic life as they acknowledge the suffering, but also experience the joy in the midst of those challenges. I think we see that in Paul. In the next few weeks, we're going to look at this letter that Paul writes to the Philippians. He writes this letter from a Roman prison. He has been shipped to Rome, where he's going to face a trial that will likely mean his death. Yet as he writes this letter, he writes a letter where he calls people time and time again to this deep sense of joy. Paul begins this passage by writing about the work of Christ that continues to take place in the life of his life and even in the work of the Roman guard. He writes that the entire Roman guard has known why he is imprisoned. He writes that the people have grown emboldened by his situation. Paul understands that the work of God cannot and will not be stopped. Friends, this is incredibly good news for us today, because there are moments in our life where it seems that things are dark and bleak, and there isn't a way forward. This is good news for us today because it means that our hope and our joy is not founded on something fleeting. Paul realizes then that his life is wrapped up in that very call. I don't know about you, but if I was writing a letter to people from a prison cell, I would probably complain. When I was a kid, I would go to camp, and I liked the idea of camp, but I didn't actually like camp because I was a nervous, worrier kind of child, and I got super homesick. And so when I would go to camp, they would say to me, you have to write a letter to the person that sponsored you to come to camp and thank them. So I would write a letter to my parents, and I'm telling you, it would be the worst letter I'm sure they got all summer, because I would write like, Dear Mom and Dad, thank you for sending me to camp. I'm very homesick and want to come home immediately. I haven't made any friends. It was just this like laundry list of complaints. If I were Paul, that's the letter I would write. But that's not the letter Paul writes. Paul doesn't write about himself. He writes about the mission of God that continues to take place, even in the midst of his suffering. He writes about the fact that he has joined up his life with Jesus in such a way that no matter what happens, Christ is proclaimed. If Christ is demonstrated and proclaimed and known, then it is all worth it. When we choose to join our lives with Jesus, we choose to allow God to reshape our priorities and the things that matter to us. We choose to allow God to reshape our relationships. We choose to allow God to reshape the things that we strive for and long for, and we devote our lives to God's mission. I believe that we are called to put a priority on Christ's mission in our lives and in the world. When I drop the kids off at school every morning, we pull up to the school and we count off and we do a cheer before they get out of the car. It's our little like sending moment. So I pull up to the school and we go 1, 2, 3, Team Johnson, hooray! We do it because I want them to remember that they are part of Team Johnson. And what that means is that they are learning to live as people of generosity and kindness. That to be a Johnson means that you keep your eyes out for the people in your life that are lonely, and you sit with them at lunch, that you understand what it means to be kind, that you understand what it means to be giving, that you understand what it means to extend grace to people. And so when we get to school, we give out this cheer as a way to remind them of the mission that they're called to have in the places that they go. There's times we've used this creed on Sunday mornings, this creed from the Church of Canada that ends in life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. Friends, there is hope and joy in that. That no matter what we face in life, that no matter what we face in death, God is with us. I hope we can hold to that. Paul ends this little intro with this line that I think continues to grab me. When he says to the Philippians, you've not only been given the privilege of believing in Christ, but also suffering for Christ. We've been given the privilege of suffering for Christ. I'm becoming more and more convinced that we can't have joy without suffering. You can't have resurrection without death. Will we offer our lives to the mission of God in the world with an assurance that God will keep us no matter what comes? Are we willing to suffer, knowing that death comes first, but resurrection always follows close behind?